How is everybody doing? Strength Chat episode 154, and today I have got a very special guest for you. Today I'm joined by a coach and competitive powerlifter with 2 British and Commonwealth titles to her name. Today I am joined by the one and only Sophia Ellis. How are you doing?
Great, thank you, especially after that introduction.
I know it's got a lot to live up to now. I feel like if I ever stop doing the podcast, I feel like I'll be like a ring announcer or something like that. That can be a different profession I can go into. But yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. How are you? What's been happening in your world?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I've managed to still be training because we've got a little home gym set up, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm very grateful for that because that has pretty much kept me like sane. But yeah, otherwise I'm good. Just like doing online coaching at the moment, which I prefer to do one-to-one. But it is what it is. We've all got to make do, right? So
yeah.
And
how are you getting on with because obviously, you know, I think at the with it being the start of the year, a lot of people were holding out for competitions this year and all that sort of stuff. How are you sort of getting on with I know you said you're keeping training, but are you trying to train with competitions in mind, or how's your training focused at the minute?
Yeah, it's been a weird one, hasn't it? Because last year I was really prepping for Worlds in Belarus, and obviously Belarus never had a lockdown as well, so there was still a little hope, a glimpse of hope there that it might still have gone ahead. But no one really knew the extent of COVID, obviously. So yeah, GB pulled out of that. So since then, we then had the announcement of the British bench, which was supposed to be around February time. But then, so I was working up to that. But then obviously we had the announcement from British Powerlifting about there'll be no nationals for 6 months, which it is a bit disheartening, obviously, for a lot of lifters, and it can be quite hard to pick up motivation when you've got no comps in mind or in the future to aim for. But it's just something that you've just got to keep on training with. Like, I'm actually finding it okay personally. Like, I don't mind that there aren't any competitions in mind because I know there will be this year, or I'm hoping. But it can't be something that you focus on the whole time. Like, if you train, you usually train because you enjoy it. So I'm just focusing on just enjoying my training at the moment, spending more time on the prehab and the rehab stuff that normally we would neglect without all this added time. So yeah, just trying to focus on that at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a good mentality to have because, yeah, you know, you can spend a little bit. I know for me, spending a little bit more time on the mobility side of things, because you know, as soon as I get a good run of bench, my shoulders start giving me a little bit of jip. So really, you know, in hindsight, you know, people look at me and think, well, why weren't you doing that before? But like what you said, you've got a little bit more time now to maybe focus on all of these things. And then from a coaching point of view, obviously you said, you know, doing a little bit more online. How are you finding that? How are your clients finding that from, you know, maybe doing, being used to doing one-to-one sessions or in-person sessions?
Yeah, they actually, well, some of them haven't been able to train because they've only got, say, bands at home. So I've given them all kind of home workouts with what they've got, because you can be more creative with your training. Like, it's not all down to squat, bench, deadlift. Like, there are things that you can do outside of that will still benefit your training. So it's more so focusing on that for those who don't have the equipment. And for those that do have the equipment, it's been fine, really. It's just been catching up more so over like video calls or on calls, and just trying to keep that contact, if you know what I mean. But a lot of my clients are hybrid anyway, so they're like part online and then I have one 90-minute session a month, which goes over like all the technical stuff. But no, they've been holding up all right, actually, so it's not been too bad. But it is a bit weird because I do like, you're able to see more things when you're one-to-one. So
yeah, definitely. I like to ask that question because I know for myself, you know, being in the, I think it's quite hard to replicate that in the gym, having, you know, that personal interaction and having a little bit of a laugh in the session. And I think that's sometimes a little bit hard to replicate over a Zoom chat. So I usually like to ask how how coaches adjust to that, because I know for me, I love being in the gym and and having people there. So yeah, it started flipped on its head where a lot of my sessions now are me sat down in a desk doing the session rather than walking around, which has been a little bit of an adjustment. So for obviously mentioned, you know, you're a coach, powerlifter, and you know, have represented you know, Great Britain and everything. But for everyone who might not know your background, how you got involved in powerlifting, how you got involved in coaching, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I haven't actually been powerlifting for long, I guess, like 3 years. So how I got into powerlifting was a bit of an odd one. I think you've heard the story anyways. But yeah, so I struggled with anorexia and bulimia for 6 years. And that just totally consumed my life. Before that, I was a footballer, did so many other sports, cricket, basketball, athletics, you name it. But then that got taken all away from me when I got the illness. And in my last year of recovery, so I was actually hospitalized and in therapy at the Maudsley Hospital, which is like the head of mental health, illness and recovery. And within that last year of my recovery, I actually got given a free gym membership by the council because I was classed as like disabled in a way. So I was like, okay, so I've been abusing cardio for so long. I'm gonna give the weights a go because I really do want to get better. And I still love exercise. So I went into the gym, into the weight section, was like, oh my God, I feel so intimidated. But my older brother wrote me up like a little program for me because he does kind of like bodybuilding strength stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll just stick to this. And as soon as I did it, I just absolutely loved it. Just the feeling of being strong, being able to have that mental release. And then someone mentioned powerlifting. I had no idea what powerlifting was at the time. Googled it, found a powerlifting club near me, joined the club. Within 4 weeks, I competed at my first comp. And then at my first comp, I qualified for nationals. And then within that first year, which was I think 2018, yeah, 2018, I was selected to represent GB at the bench in Tokyo. So that was mad.
And how was that? How did you adjust to the different competitions? Because I know, you know, going from a regional competition to a national competition and then, you know, performing on the international stage, how was that compared to, you know, when you mentioned there first going into the weight room of, or, you know, what am I supposed to do here? How was that progression, you know, ending up with going to Tokyo and at the bench press?
Obviously it was like an uncomfortable feeling, I think, because I hadn't been in the sport for long, and I was around people who had just more experience than me, especially going into my first nationals. My coach at the time, he was like, we need to get you doing another divisional comp just so that you've got more experience of how comps run, because my first comp, I was just going into it just to have a bit of fun, just see how it all works, and just managed to qualify. So yeah, it was more so just getting more comps under my belt to get that experience. But I am someone who's very competitive. If I really like something and want to do it really well, I will. So I just put my whole focus into it. But no, I think the main thing for me was just enjoying it, but also it's very easy to let that competitive kind of spirit take over sometimes. And definitely within my first year of powerlifting, I learned that it's not all about the numbers. So yeah, it was obviously, it all happened very quickly, but I adjusted to it fine. And I think that's because I'm used to being in that kind of environment with all my other sports, having that pressure. So yeah, it was good though.
Oh, cool. Yeah, because I know with a lot of lifters that I work with, especially, you know, the beginners going into intermediates and looking to get into the first competitions, as opposed to, you know, some lifters might only do 2 or 3 competitions a year, which might be the regional or divisional, and then national, and then maybe the international competition. So it might be 2 or 3. Whereas for beginners, you want, like what you said, you want to get them that experience on the platform. But you know, if you enjoy something, I think, you know, when you walk out and you're doing the lifts, powerlifting is the few sports that, you know, your training is what your competition is going to be, as opposed to, you know, football or rugby or anything like that. But I think it's supposed, you know, like what you mentioned, everything around it, that, you know, sometimes the running of it. I know, you know, the first nationals that I went to, compared to the Yorkshire and North East, you know, divisional, still both competitions ran very well, but yeah, you can tell that there is a bit of a step up, and then the step up from nationals to international. I bet that's another, you know.
Oh man. Yeah, that is totally different. Yeah, so my first international was in Tokyo for the world bench press, and that was just another level. I mean, like, even the weights area, like the warm-up area, was crazy. Like, it was so cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, just the whole setup of it, and so many people there. It was obviously a big event, so there is a little bit more pressure, and also that you're not just doing it for yourself now, you're doing it for your team. Like, the points add up, right? So you don't want to let your teammates down either. So
Yeah.
it's that added pressure, but no, I thrive off it, so it's okay.
Yeah. On a little bit of a tangent on that, because I know was it 2018 or 2019, the men's British was in Portsmouth, and then it was in Dover. Now, I was only driving from Leeds, and, you know, that to me was being having not travelled that far down south, you know, for a long time, to go down there. I thought that was, you know, quite a long journey driving down there. Now compare that to, you know, flying from the UK to Tokyo. What was that like in adjustment? Because, you know, I joke with people. There was a Scottish guy that I was speaking to, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I've come down all the way down to Portsmouth and Dover." And sometimes trying to get it in my head that, yeah, you're actually going over to Tokyo. There's a time difference. You know, you've got to adjust. How was that like, you know, on a little bit of a tangent?
Yeah, like, especially some people think it's mad because it's only for bench only as well. Like, I'm not going there. I didn't go there for a free lift. I only went there for one event. But also I was also water loading at the time. So any of my comps that were a long travel, particularly for like nationals, I'd always be traveling whilst water loading, which was just grim. But with Tokyo, I made sure that I went out there a week beforehand, so that I had time to adjust to the whole timing, had time for the water loading as well. I like to be prepared. So I went out there, a week earlier, but I went to so I was staying in Tokyo for the first week, but the competition was in Narita, which was just like slightly outside of, like, on the border.
Right.
So then I traveled down to Narita. But I will say this to anyone who does their first international comp: make sure you bring your kit with you with hand luggage, right? Because I'll tell you a little story. So when I was going out there, so I flew to Amsterdam, and then from Amsterdam I flew straight to Tokyo. Problem being, I got in Amsterdam, was like, the flight was about to go in 5 minutes, sprinted through Amsterdam airport. As soon as I got to the plane, they were like, "Yeah, your luggage isn't going to turn up at Tokyo." And I was just like, "What?" And that had all my equipment in it. It had my belt, it had my singlet, not my belt, my wrist wraps, my singlet, everything. And so the lesson I learned was to bring all my kit with me on the hand luggage and not in the hold. But luckily I got it back like literally just a few days before the comp. So
right, okay. There's a top tip there. There's a bit of a wisdom and a gold nugget of information there. Yeah, make sure your kit's in your hand luggage.
yeah.
So obviously gave a little bit of a background to how you got involved in strength training and powerlifting, and sent the topics before as we were setting up this chat, and the diving into the main part, if you like. Obviously, and you've probably had this as a coach, when people are coming up saying, "Oh, I'm not strong enough. I don't feel I'm strong enough, or I need to do a little bit of training to actually get to a starting point of where you want to be." And, you know, you've used the example of there. You got your free gym membership. You've done a lot of cardio, and you've done training in the background. What are your thoughts on, or how have you coached people who are maybe a little bit nervous or unsure what their starting point is, or, you know, that they feel like they need to lose weight to get involved in something, or put on weight to get involved in something? What's your sort of experience and thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is actually a really common thing that comes up a lot, especially on my Instagram. I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, I don't think I'm strong enough to compete." Like, this is the beauty of powerlifting. Like, with a divisional level, there is no entry like requirement. You can just go there with at whatever level, at whatever strength you want. And we also have comps that are like for novices, so people who have only, this is their first ever comp, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the nice thing about the sport, that it is really accessible. And there is no pressure on that first comp either. So my advice has always been that like you go to do your first comp to just get that experience and just to enjoy it, and to try and find a local powerlifting club as well, because then you can go there as like a team almost, so that you're not on your own, and you'll have people there who know how it runs, who can guide you through it. It would be the worst thing to just turn up to your first comp and not having anyone there to like handle you. So having someone there who knows the sport, even if it's another lifter, but yeah, there's no entry requirement. There's no like strength that you have to be at to do your first comp. So I always say that. In terms of the weights, like as you see with powerlifting, we are all different shapes and sizes, and that is what I absolutely love about the sport, because we're not judged on what we look like, right? So it doesn't matter. Like I just say, just go in as whatever weight you are, and then once you start getting into it more, then you decide, you can kind of see what weight category you'd be in, because everyone in each weight category kind of has similar kind of leverages or heights, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Even though we're all slightly different, but you can kind of see which weight class you would fit in. So it just takes a little bit of time, but yeah, there's no requirement on what you look like. So, and I think that's the beauty of it. You just focus on what your body's capable of, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes, because it is a common question of, oh, I'm not strong enough, or I'm not in a starting position, and they're looking at sort of the, especially with the influence of social media, you're looking, at the top level and seeing, the weights that they're lifting, or the physiques that some lifters have had who have been training for years. They're not showing something that they've when they first started out, because everyone's got their own starting point, and I think that sometimes, they're looking at the end product rather than focusing on their starting point. And as well, I know for me, how I got involved in powerlifting when I first started coaching, I was working a lot more evenings, so I couldn't play as much rugby because I couldn't train as much. And with the team I was playing for, if you didn't train, you couldn't get a game on a Saturday. So I remember one of the coaches that I worked with gave me a 12-week program and said, "Oh, there you go, you'll compete in 12 weeks." And going from a rugby environment where it's 15 against 15, right? We're our team, that's another team, to then go to a powerlifting competition where exactly like you said, whatever level of strength that you've got, everyone wants you to make that lift. Everyone wants you to encourage you. And it was one of those things where, especially if they're I don't know whether you had it. Yeah, you go for fun, but sometimes that competitive streak sort of kicks in a little bit, and it's like, right, he's done this way, I need to try and do it this way. Whereas actually, when you go there, especially to your first competition, and you start chatting to, a couple of the older heads who might have been doing quite a lot of competitions, or other people who are in the same position as you realize that actually, you're only, it sounds a little bit like a bit of a cliche, but your only competition is you, because you're trying to beat your own lifts and progress from there. So as a sport, I think it's very unique in the fact that everyone's wanting you to to do well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like the support in the community is just amazing. Like even people in your own weight category that you're against want you to make that lift, and I think that's what is unique about it. I mean, obviously, when you get up into international level, it gets a little bit more. But at like even at national level, I'm really good friends with a lot of people in my weight class, and we all want each other to do well. And really, like whatever performance you do on the day is down to you, right? Like no one else changes that. So you're just showing what strength you have and the work that you've put in, but everything can change on the day. So
and I think a lot, when we're talking about football and rugby, it's not as though everyone's getting paid getting paid to do this. It is an amateur sport, you know, and people get involved in it because they enjoy it. On the flip side of that, obviously we've spoken about the competitions and the training side of things, but also the, you know, being able to feel stronger and using training as or powerlifting as a, I can't think of the word, but as a tool to sort of increase confidence, increase sort of having confidence in yourself, and, you know, mental health as well. How important do you think that is in getting people feeling stronger and confidence, and the influence that it had on you, but also, you know, on the clients that you've been working as well on that side of things?
Oh, so much. It's just, it completely changes your perspective and your mindset. Like, as you said before, everything nowadays is so visual, especially with Instagram and in the fitness world. It's everyone just looking for, oh, abs and all that. But when you go into powerlifting, and because it takes away from that focus of your aesthetics, even though some people might have still aesthetics goals, and that's fine, because powerlifting does also have those benefits to it. But once you start focusing on something that isn't your appearance and really focusing on what your body is capable of doing, I just think that gives you an added boost that working on just your aesthetics can't give you, in a weird sense. Like, it's hard to describe, but the amount of confidence it has given me within my own body and myself is just insane. And that's why I wanted to start coaching, because I wanted to show people how much this can benefit you by doing some strength training. Even if you don't want to be a powerlifter and just work on you, like, strength training is just so helpful in so many ways.
Yeah, I think there is a definite correlation between even if, because I think strength is relative, you know, what might be heavy to one person might be light to another, and, you know, everyone's got their own thoughts on what strong or strength feels like, and, you know, what they want to get out of it. And I think once people feel stronger within themselves, it doesn't just carry over in the gym. Yes, it gives them confidence in the gym, but I think they carry themselves a lot better outside of it. I always remember, and this is one of one of my favorite sort of stories from the gym, or examples from the gym. I had a woman come into a gym. She was in her mid to late 60s, and it was one of those where she'd never actually been to a gym before, but she came in and she was like, do you know what, actually I'm starting to feel a little bit old, a little bit tired, can't really do as much as what I wanted to do. And we were like, right, okay, what's your starting point? And I always like to ask, well, what do you want to get out of the gym? What do you want to do? And we've got like a big tire in the corner of the gym. She kind of looks around and just went, I want to flip that. And that was her,
Love
you know,
that.
that was her goal. And, you know, she got to flip the tire, and I think maybe 2-3 years down the line, she's still training, she's still doing the online classes, and all right, she's not maybe deadlifting 200 kilos or, you know, benching whatever, but she feels strong in herself. And, you know, you can see when she comes into the gym, she's feeling confident, because compared to the other people that might be in the classes, or the other people who are coming into the gym, which are maybe half her age, she can still hold her own, she can still, you know, and do it at that pace, which I think, you know, when we're saying strength is relative and the influence that you can have, it is a little bit broader than just maybe the weight on the bar. You mentioned there as well about just stepping away from the powerlifting side of things. Obviously, given the current climate with with COVID and a lot of people working from home, and we touched on a little bit that some of your clients might not have kit at home. How do you sort of still replicate that feeling strong and having that confidence? Because I know in the first lockdown, I didn't have access to the Alico kit that we chatted about before we started recording. So I think I took a strongman log from the gym and a couple of kettlebells. And you do think, it's going to be hard getting back under the bar or deadlifting, and you can start feeling a little bit down. How have you sort of put that across to keep confidence and people feeling strong in your coaching?
So I've actually given people who don't have equipment different goals. So I've set them different goals to achieve. And because this is a temporary lockdown, right, it's not going to last forever. So they will be able to get under the bar again. But I've been giving them different goals, that maybe something that they can now focus on that they haven't been able to in the past. Say, for example, hitting 10 reps on pull-ups or something like that, because it's still a strength aspect, but it's slightly different, or like being able to do a muscle up. So I've been given them more technical stuff on muscle ups. Or even say something like doing more push-ups, so setting them 20 rep push-ups challenge, something like that.
Yeah.
It just gives them something to kind of focus on, and then an end goal, and then it's kind of like setting those shorter goals. Same as if you're injured, you have to realign all your goals, you have to adjust everything. It's just, I see it as a similar thing, and then you're still able to do all that other work that is going to still benefit your training. So I just say everything you're doing right now is still going to benefit your training for when you do go back under the bar. It's better than doing nothing.
Yeah, definitely. A couple of conversations that I've had with clients, we can still make progress. It's just there's that diagram in there, the route to success. And I usually say if it was a straight line, if I could get to people to where they wanted to be in 12 weeks, I'd only ever do 12-week programs. I'd only ever be like, right, that's it, and then that's everything that they've achieved. Whereas actually, there's going to be obstacles in the way. There's going to be times when you've got to adjust a little bit. So yeah, I completely agree with the setting little challenges like the pull-ups, like the push-ups, because if you feel stronger with that, it's going to fill you with a little bit more confidence when you come back to training underneath the bar. One thing you mentioned as well was about sort of social media and how that sort of projects an image of what people should potentially look like. And what are your thoughts on what are sort of the maybe the pros and cons of that? And do you think that that's one of the main reasons why it actually puts people off from getting involved in powerlifting or strength training, or actually just getting involved in going to the gym?
I think like the pros of it in one sense is people are able to see that they kind of, it gets rid of some of the myths around powerlifting in terms of like, oh, you're going to get bulky. We've heard that all the time if you lift weights. And someone like, well, a lot of females, if they post the picture now, it's like they're not bulky, like, or even if they are muscly, like they're confident in themselves about that, and that's what powerlifting has given them. But I think the cons of it in terms of it can sometimes set a kind of like a bar in which people think that they have to be at to be able to compete at any level, or oh, I have to be super muscly to be able to compete at this sport or something like that, which is not the case at all. Like, and if they just watch a real powerlifting comp take place, they will see that they'll have all different shapes and sizes. There is no one's been pushed away because they're a certain shape or size. So it's just showing people that wherever you are right now, fitness is open to you. Like, you can exercise. You shouldn't be shut out because of that. And people should be respected, whatever shape or size they are as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because one thing on that is, I think, as well as sort of, we touched on the strength side of things, but also the health, side of things. And, because there is a broad spectrum of people that are involved in powerlifting, in strength training, what are your thoughts on, because obviously there's that anything over 5 reps in powerlifting is conditioning, but
cardio.
yeah, definitely. I'm on sets of 7 on deadlifts and squats at the minute, and it's like, whew, right, okay.
Try 12 reps. Try
12 reps. Ooh, that's a little bit.
It's disgusting.
That's a little bit rich for my blood. I don't know whether, but yeah, the thought on that is, in terms of what health looks like, and again, I think health is relative to, because you said there, you don't know what people's position are in, what they're working towards. What are your kind of thoughts on people trying to define what health is, and maybe looking at someone and saying, oh, you're unhealthy because you've gone up a weight class, or what's unhealthy in terms of, right, you've actually dropped down a weight class or lost weight. What's kind of your thoughts on that?
So no one ever knows someone's full situation, right? Someone might have gained weight because they're having a really hard time at home at the moment. Like, I find that kind of finger pointing is never going to be useful at all. And I mean, if someone is, there's different, it's really a sensitive subject at the moment as well.
Yeah.
And I feel like any kind of body shaming is just not cool, like just no.
Yeah.
But there's different extremes, right? So if someone's like super underweight and you can see that they're struggling in some way, then they need like professional help, right? So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But yeah, I think as long as they're healthy, they feel they enjoy what they're doing and they're feeling okay in themselves, and yeah. But if they aren't and they feel unhealthy and they want to lose weight or they want to gain weight, then that's also cool. Like it's
Yeah.
not something that should be shamed upon at all. Like a few of my clients, although they do have goals for like powerlifting, they've also got side goals for like, oh, they want to lose a bit of weight, or they want to, so I give them more conditioning work or look at their food management, stress management, sleep, etc. But yeah, so some people have goals that they want to gain weight, so it's not always just straightforward as like, yes, let's just try and lift as much weight as possible. Everyone will have their own little side goals as well as that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's you've got to speak to the person rather than just thinking, right, I'm going to put you into this category and be like, right, this is the only thing that you're gonna focus on. I know for a couple of people that I've trained, you know, sometimes that you think, oh no, do you not think you should like lose a little bit too much weight, and or put on weight, and the questions I usually ask is, how are you feeling? If you're feeling good, like what you said, you know, if you're feeling good and you feel like you're progressing, then we can address other areas that can still have progress. And you know, what's that point where because obviously as a coach, you're just there to, like what I said, just coach the person and what their goals are, not trying to put them into categories. Where's that line where, you know, if you need to have external help, or maybe refer out, or, you know, help them with that, depending on, you know, whether they want to lose weight or put on weight?
So in terms of like, if they're wanting to lose weight or put on weight, I have enough knowledge around that to help them with that. But if it comes to something such as they're suffering with an eating disorder, or something becomes in that kind of mental health sense, then I will refer out, because I'm not, you have to know there's a thin line between everything. Like, say there's a thin line between a nutritionist and a personal trainer, and it's being like knowing not to cross that line as well, and knowing when you should refer out. Like, I'm not a massage therapist, I'm not a sports therapist, so if I see something and I feel like, okay, I'm not quite sure on that, then I'm going to refer out, because I'm not going to give advice that I'm not 100% sure on. So it's, as a coach, taking that responsibility and knowing when to refer out, and knowing the kind of like extent of your knowledge as well, because at the end of the day, you're there to help them, and you don't want to do anything that you do, you don't want to be detrimental to that client. So yeah, it's knowing when to take that step and be like, okay, I want you to go see this person, and actually being able to work with other coaches or professionals, and then you yourself, you learn more as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that, you know, that's the whole reason why I you know, I started the podcast, to speak to other coaches and athletes, you know, such as yourself, to be like, right, what's other people's perspectives on it, and you know, you can pick other things and use other things to only improve yourself as a coach. With that in mind, and touching on the coaching side of things, because with social media and everything at the minute now, you can there's loads of information out there, and I think sometimes what I try and put across to the clients that I work with is trying to filter that information. And you know, you've got courses at the minute which are like, right, sign up to this app and we're going to do loads of conditioning, and we're going to just eat lettuce and strawberries for 12 weeks. What kind of, how did you go about, and who are your influences in terms of coaches and information that you use? And you know, what advice and recommendations do you give people who are looking for that advice to put on weight, lose weight, and you know, try and find the right method for them, or is it a case of, you know, sometimes you need to do those courses to realize that actually, do you know what, that's not right, that's not for me?
I think the problem being is that people make things so complex on social media, and it really doesn't have to be. And that's where it becomes really a bit confusing because there's so much bullshit that gets put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, you have to like filter it. There's been a few times where I've got new clients and I said, oh, I've seen this on YouTube and you've got to do it like this. And I'm like, okay, but that's not the most efficient way of doing something. So it's having that conversation with the lifter, making sure that you're open in talking about these things, and if they have any concerns about anything, and then just like kind of dissecting through it and showing them. But as a coach, you're there to show them the right way of doing it, or how, not necessarily the right way, but the way that's going to suit them best, because obviously everyone's got different leverages. So my squat is going to look totally different to say your squat, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's being able to explain to them why, because I think the problem is when you tell someone to do something and they don't know why they're doing it. You, as a coach, you need to tell them and explain to them why they are doing something. Same with their accessory work. Why is that in there? There should be a reason as to why that accessory work is in there. The coach should be able to give that reasoning as well. So it's like almost teaching your client to be their own coach in some ways, because you want them to be able to analyze their own lifting and their own technique and realize why they're doing certain things and pick up on things. So I think as a coach, it's really important to do that.
Yeah, I think one of the keywords you said there was being efficient at it, because there's loads of ways that you can do something, but some ways are going to be a little bit, get you a little bit of a better result. I always, not related to powerlifting or anything, but I worked a couple of months as a tree surgeon, and I was trying to do something, and it took me ages. It took me like an obscenely long time to do it, which it shouldn't have taken. And there was the guy that I was working with came over and he said, "Oh, you do know you could have done it this way?" And when he did it in half the time that I did it. And you think, oh yeah, and you know, that's why I said sometimes I think, because especially going back to the powerlifting side of things, you know, a lot of people sometimes do their own programming, and sometimes, you know, you need that coach or that outside looking in to look and see, actually, you know, this might be a better route to do it. And as well, you know, when you're saying that you've got to have a reason, you've got to have a why, and the lifter and the clients that you're working with have got to learn, because they're the ones that are feeling the weight on the bar. You know, on the back, they're the ones that are actually doing the work. And you know, I always say to clients, it's, you know, you have a better understanding of your body. I can see and give my opinion on what it looks like, but you know how it feels. You know whether you feel a twinge in your back, or whether something doesn't feel right. And one of my proudest moments was when clients have gone to other gyms and seen people do something, you know, wrong, and maybe go up and, oh, have you thought about that way? So I completely agree with having a reason behind it, rather than just putting something in there for no reason. And that kind of goes on to the next question of, sometimes you know, you'll look at people's programmings, or look at people when they're trying to achieve something, and they'll just absolutely batter themselves. They'll just run themselves into the ground. Why do you think that is? Why do people sometimes think that training is sometimes a little bit of a punishment, and they need to push it, you know, that much, rather than, you know, not beating yourself as much and trying to think of more efficient ways of training?
I think people who see training as a punishment or use it in that way have other things. I feel like it's something, they're things that need to be working on, that they are avoiding, and they're using training as a way of punishing themselves for that, in a sense.
Okay.
It's like how I'm seeing it right now is, so when I used to use training as a punishment, because I had all this other trauma that I was working through, with the eating disorder and everything. I was using training as a way of trying to get rid of as many calories as possible, just trying to burn myself out. And I think that there was an underlying issue that I needed to address. So I think for some people it is that, for others it's that whole theme of keep on hustling, if you know what I mean, like keep on pushing, keep on pushing. When you are just going to burn yourself out. And I definitely learned that within the first few months of training. I was training 7 days a week, just like absolutely hammering it in the gym. And it wasn't until I took rest days that I realized like that was where I was making the most growth and the most progress. So it's being able to actually take that step back and really focus on your recovery and see how important recovery is for your training. Because yeah, you can hammer training as much as you like, but if you haven't got your recovery there, all that work that you're putting in isn't going to go as far as it would normally do if you had all that recovery in place. So training and recovery really go hand in hand, and I think there has to be that really that highlight on the recovery side of things. Especially like with COVID, you hear people saying all the time, oh, you've got time, so you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, but no one really knows everyone's situation, right? So
yeah,
it's having
definitely.
it's having that balance. Like powerlifting shouldn't be your life.
100%. You know, I've had chats about this with other coaches, and you know, there seems to be especially now, maybe not so now because it's been, you know, rubbish weather today, but you know, getting out for walks, going out and seeing other and doing other things. All right, you know, there's not a lot of other places open, but you know, there's other things that you can, you know, invest your time in. And you know, when you're saying there about there's probably going to be an underlying issue if you do feel as though you need to do, you know, exercise all the time and really push it. And I think sometimes, or I don't know what your thoughts on this are, you know, they're not seeing progress, so they think, oh well, I need to do more. That must be the reason why I need to keep going, because I need to make more progress by doing more. What do you think of that? Do you think that is a cycle of, you know, they don't see progress or they're not seeing they're progressing, so they need to then hammer themselves a little bit more?
I feel like, yeah, that could be a reason, definitely, especially when everyone thinks that more equals more, when that's not always applied to everything. And yeah, if you're burning yourself out, you're just not going to have the energy for your workouts, and you will eventually feel that. So I think it's part of those messages that are put out there with the whole kind of like, you're not going to get anywhere without some blood, sweat and tears kind of thing. But what people don't realize is not everyone shows all of their training. They don't show all the boring parts of the rehab, the recovery, the amount they focus on their nutrition. They don't show all that, all the behind the scenes stuff. And I think that's where it kind of gets a little bit confusing for especially beginners, when they think, oh, I'm seeing these people kind of like hit PRs every single week, I should be maxing out every week, when that isn't the case. And those lifts as well could have been done like 2-3 months ago. Like, you never really know. So just take everything with a pinch of salt, because not everything that you see is kind of truth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's not the
definitely.
whole picture.
Yeah, it's you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg, because I do think sometimes that, you know, people only want to show what, you know, what they think their people want to see. And you know, sometimes when I have check-ins with clients, or I'm speaking, or you know, speaking to other coaches, sometimes you kind of have to laugh of like, you know, sometimes it's quite simple, and it's quite, or people think it's boring. So when I say, how's your sleep been? Yeah, I got 2 hours of sleep last night. Right, maybe let's try get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you know, and see how you get from there. And then they wake up feeling fresh, and it's like, oh, okay, I feel a little bit better. Right, how's your food been? Well, I had Cocoa Pops for breakfast. Nothing wrong with Cocoa Pops. I'm a Cocoa Pops fan. But
Love
then it might be,
Pops.
yeah, 100%. But then it might be, oh, I only live off Smileys and potato Smileys and baked beans. Again, I like both of those things. But you know, if you're wanting to improve recovery and everything like that, right? Can we get a better source of protein? Can we get some veggies in there? And exactly what you said with the recovery side of things, there isn't a magic formula. It's not something really complicated. Sometimes it's the another phrase that gets, you know, thrown around is the basics of, right, this is what we need to focus on. And I think, you know, with that, once maybe those things are addressed, and they realize, like what you were saying, when you ended up having rest days, you could feel like you could do more in the gym, kind of going full circle to what we started at the start of the chat was, that can build confidence as well, and build confidence in your own abilities, rather than thinking you have to hammer yourself 6 7 days a week. What do you think about
that? So, well, in terms of hammering yourself,
Yeah, do you think, that actually when you changing around, and, focus on recovery a little bit more, and that can actually help towards building confidence in the gym, rather than wanting to do loads all the time?
Oh yeah, totally. And it's like what I said before, like it shouldn't be your life. Like training shouldn't, unless you're obviously like a professional athlete, then it is going to be a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
And it is, training is a big part of my life, but I make sure that it isn't something that takes over like my whole day, or like I'm focused on it every single second of the day, because it will just eventually just be exhausting, and it takes away from that enjoyment of it. And if you are just pushing yourself and pushing yourself and pushing yourself, you'll end up seeing training as a chore, and you don't want it to be a chore. You want to be something that you're excited to do or look forward to doing. And if it's something that you are just pushing yourself through, then that's when you start making mistakes. When you're tired, you're going to start getting injuries. When you're stressed, things are going to start not going right. Form is going to go. It's things like that. And then as soon as those things start breaking down, and once you start pushing yourself, you're going to get injured. Then when you're injured and you're out of training for 3 months, you're going to feel even worse. So it's really thinking about not only the short term, but the long term as well, and knowing that you're doing all these little tedious things. So like, yeah, looking at your sleep, we take sleep so much for granted, but it's such an important thing that we should really value. I don't know if you've read the book Why We Sleep.
I haven't, but it is on my list. I've got a lot of people have mentioned that, but and a couple of people have said it's really, really good.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend reading that. It just makes you just realize how important something like sleep is. We all know it anyway, but just like the more in-depth version of it. So yeah, as I said, and no one wants injuries. Like it's the worst thing to have. So just being able to just rein it back a little bit and make sure that you are having that balance. And as you said, only you know how you feel. So really being honest with yourself and of how you feel, and not lying to yourself about it, because it's so easy to just push it away and be like, no, I'm fine, just keep going. But like we've all been there, but you're lying to yourself, and then something happens, like you do pick up an injury, or you pick up a niggle, and then you're like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have pushed that.
Yeah, definitely. And touching on sleep, that's why I'll usually, if people haven't had a good night's sleep, or one bad night's sleep isn't going to be the end of the world. Sometimes you just have an off night, but if it's becoming a long-term thing, I just use the example of, and it might be an extreme example, but that's why lack of sleep is a form of torture. That's we're not supposed to have. We are supposed to have sleep. We're supposed to be around in the day, sleep. It's sleeping at night, and with the training side of things, 100%. We touched on it a little bit before about the client's going to understand their body, and if something like that happens, or you do feel a little bit maybe demotivated with powerlifting or whatever you're doing at the time, that isn't going to go anywhere. Especially strength sports, whether it's powerlifting, strongman, weightlifting, or anything, they're still going to be there, and it's shown from the weight categories and the age categories. You can do strength training all the time. You can always come back to it and go off and do something else and come back. And that's the whole point of, training. We've touched on it a couple of times. You do it because you enjoy it. It shouldn't be, I quite like the phrase that you use. It shouldn't be a chore, because, no one ever thinks in their head, oh, I've got to do cleaning. No one's ever like, oh, right, I need to do that. I know I'm not like that. But training should be the things that it's the part of the day where you don't have to stress about work. You don't have to stress about anything else. You just go in there, focusing on you and having fun with that. Quite a lot of topics covered there, and a couple of tangents thrown in. But the last question that I wanted to ask, from everything that we've chatted about there, for everyone listening, what would be your take-home points or words of wisdom?
Oh God, these questions always hit me at the end. I'm like, focus on yourself. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Focus on you. And especially in this current COVID situation, please don't be disheartened by if you don't have equipment or if competitions aren't there. Just do what you can. Only you know how much you can do. Like, don't beat yourself up about it. Strength doesn't go just like that. You will pick it back up again. But yeah, just keep your head up, keep your chin up, and yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know what else to say. You got to hit me with that one.
That wasn't too bad. I thought that was some good take-up points and words of wisdom. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. For that, that nothing is gonna at some point, there's got to be a little bit of normality there. So yeah, I thought that was a good reply to that. For everyone listening as well, for the topics that we've covered, want to see that the content you're putting out there, or maybe have some questions about the topics that we've covered, or maybe even want to get involved in coaching with you, where can people find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram at Sophia Strength or at Ellis Coaching for my coaching page, and then all the details will be on there. Can also drop me an email at sophiaellispt@gmail.com. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or needs any help, especially right now with anything in terms of maintaining strength during lockdown, welcome to hit me up and I'll help as best possible.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot for taking the time to chat with me. Really enjoyed chatting about all things training, powerlifting and strength. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.